So who is Maadhavi? Like I said, apart from King Yayati's daughter, which is her primary identity, she is also the mother of four Chakravartis of Bharatvarsh. And she was a princess who had the gift of regaining virginity after every childbirth. Like Kunti had a similar gift. Maadhavi also had a similar gift. She is an ancestor in many ways of Kunti and the Pandavas. She belongs to a more ancient Bharat. This apart, Maadhavi is a princess who decided to marry the forest. A very unheard of kind of marriage. We hear people marrying kings, priests, industrialists, tradesmen, but we don't hear of people marrying the forest. This is something that Maadhavi did in his Swayamvar. She is a Mrigacharini. Mrigacharini is a kind of ascetic who lives like the deer. And she is the daughter who opened the gates of Swarga for her father. So how does he see? How is his Maadhavi? How is his retelling of Maadhavi? Clearly, there is no ambiguity over there. She is a victim. Okay. Bhisham Shahan is Maadhavi is a motherless girl. He does not have any reference to Vishwachi who gave birth to Maadhavi. She is trapped in a world of men. There are no other women characters in the play apart from Maadhavi. They are only men. And all that these men do is exploit this woman who has got this gift of becoming a virgin after every childbirth. And his understanding of virginity is also becoming pretty and beautiful. So it's a male gaze at the end of the day. Maadhavi starts as a knave princess, very young, full of romantic dreams. And at the end, she is hopeless and she is disillusioned. She gets a voice because she makes some kind of a choice, but essentially it's the choice of, it's choicelessness in choice. So he doesn't give her any agency. She walks away in resignation. And Indian society is depicted, of that time, is depicted in extremely poor light. What kind of a father you just give your daughter away? What kind of an ascetic? You're just going on selling a woman. So the theme that he covers in his play is patriarchy, objectification of the female body, commodification of women in the name of dharma. Then he shows the hollowness of ideals like honor, sacrifice, and he shows that in ancient Bharat, women had little, agency. All they could do was keep quiet and endure and just suffer. So this is his Maadhavi, which became extremely popular. It was staged by many people. But the question that I want to ask is, are we reading the story right? Because there is something called lens. We all look at the world through lens, the lens of concepts, the lens of what is right and what is wrong, as we have been taught. Okay, and like you can see on this slide, when we look at the same thing from different lenses, the thing starts appearing different. So if you see through a green lens, a red apple would appear black. But that doesn't mean that the red apple is black. It just means you are looking through a lens which is giving it that appearance. So when we listen to some stories in Mahabharata, it's very important to read them with certain amount of criticality, not the criticality that we have been taught. Because I think a serious problem of our times that we have been taught to be critical in a certain way. We have been taught to ask a certain set of questions. And I would really like to invite people to ask a different set of questions and see what happens then. And the lens through which we are reading stories like Maadhavi, there are some more stories, is this lens of Victorian morality. Where we have very rigid gender roles, which cannot be switched. But the man is the head of the family. The wife, in marriage, becomes a possession of the man.
Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ojasvi Mishra, welcoming you to a new series where we wish to define Indic feminism. Firstly, to reintroduce Indian models of inspiration to women and girls of India to explore their feminine infinitude. Secondly, to explain how Indian history and literature records women in more substantial ways than other civilizations could. This provides India with its self styled feminine ideology and Indic feminism, which caters to Indian realities, Indian culture, and Indian society. It rejects hyperautonomy while embracing the contribution of the woman beyond her womb. This new initiative taken on Indic Talks, Center for Indic Studies, is called Sitaism. In this episode of the series, we have with us Madhureima Devii Dasi ji, who is a researcher, writer, and educator with nearly 15 years of experience in the education and social sector. She has worked with organizations like Administrative Staff College of India and the Nandi Foundation, leading research and training initiatives focused on girls and underserved communities. Currently, she is Senior Associate Research and Training at Ignis Careers. Today, with her, we will delve into the life of Maadhavi. I welcome you, ma'am, and I request you to take over the reins.
Thank you, Ojasvi. Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Namaste, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about Madhavi. So, we all know Madhavi as King Yayati's daughter, but who else is she? So, who is Madhavi? Like I said, apart from King Yayati's daughter, which is her primary identity, she is also the mother of four Chakravartis of Bharatvarsh. And she was a princess who had the gift of regaining virginity after every childbirth. Like Kunti had a similar gift. Madhvi also had a similar gift. She is an ancestor in many ways of Kunti and the Pandavas. She belongs to a more ancient Bharat. This apart, Madhvi is a princess who decided to marry the forest. A very unheard of kind of marriage. We hear people marrying kings, priests, industrialists, tradesmen, but we don't hear of people marrying the forest. This is something that Madhvi did in his Swayamvar. She is a Mrigacharini. Mrigacharini is a kind of ascetic who lives like the deer, and she is the daughter who opened the gates of Swarga for her father. It's interesting that today is Father's Day, and today we are discussing Madhvi. It couldn't have been more synchronistic. So let's move forward. So, like I said, Madhvi is Hayati's daughter, but we don't hear of her very often. So let's just look at Hayati's family tree and trace Madhvi in that. Hayati, like many of us might know, he had three wives. From his first wife, Devyani, who happens to be Guru Shukracharya's daughter, he had two children. Both were sons, Yadu and Turvasu. Then he also married Sharmishta, who is a princess who was serving as Devyani's maid. From Sharmishta, he had three sons, Druhyu, Anu, and Puru. And we all know that when Devyani gets to know that Yati has secretly married Sharmishta and has had sons with with her, she, breaks down. She runs to her father, and in a spur of anger, Guru Shukracharya curses Yati that you're going to turn old. So all your vanities and lusts are going to go off along with that. Now Yati is really upset about this. Even Devyani realizes that, oh, this is like harming my own interests. So, they request Guru Shukracharya for a solution. And Shukracharya says, if any of your sons exchange their youth with you, you can enjoy youth for a certain period of time. So, Yayati goes to all his five sons, and the son who agrees is Sharmishta's youngest son, Puru. So, he gives Yayati his youth, and then Yayati enjoys youth for a significant period of time, while Puru is living Yayati's old age. And in this extended period of youth, Yayati develops relationship with Apsara. Her name is Vishwachi. And from Vishwachi, he has Madhavi. So Madhavi is the daughter of an Apsara. And our Itihasa and Puranas have lots of stories of Apsaras entering into union with kings and other people, rishis especially, and birthing very powerful women. And Madhavi is blessed with this power that I discussed, that she could regain virginity every time she gave birth to a child. Now let's look at Madhavi's own family. Madhavi has 4 sons. All the 4 of them are key emperors of Bharatvarsha of their time. Okay. So these 4 sons, she has a first son with Raja Harishva of Ayodhya. So Madhavi is one of the great mothers, great grandmothers of Sri Ram. And she gives birth to Vasumanas with Harishva. Then with King Divodas of Kashi, she has her son Pratardana. And with Ushinara, who is the king of Bhojnagari, she has her son. Sorry, this is a mistake. It should be Shibi. And then with Vishwamitra, who's also Raja Kaushika of Kanyakubja, she has her son Ashtaka. All of Madhavi's 4 sons are exemplary kings of their time. They are all known for one virtue or the other. And they're celebrated. Shibi, who later becomes the king of Bhojnagari, is celebrated even in Buddhist and Jataka stories because he was extremely selfless. All right. But then in today's world, when we listen to Madhavi's story, we get to know that, okay, here is a woman who had 4 sons from 4 different kings. And this is shocking. This is a big shock. We kind of feel then there's something has to be seriously wrong with our past, with our culture. And then when we get to know how Madhavi ends up mothering these 4 kings, then we are even more scandalized because we get to know about this whole concept of Kanya Shulkam. In today's India, you have something called dowry, but once upon a time there was Kanya Shulkam, wherein if a king or a man had to marry a woman, he had to pay something to the woman's family because they are going to lose a resource, so you pay. So, but Kanya Shulkam is a concept which is very scandalizing to the modern Indian mind, and Madhavi's story therefore happens to be a story which we just don't get, or even if we get it, it comes to us as a shock, as a very shameful shock that, oh my God, something has to be seriously wrong with our culture that we sold our women. And in Madhavi's case, she happens to be sold 4 times. I mean, how horrendous can this get? So if you look at the contemporary retellings of Madhavi's story, we experience this moral shock. The writers have written from this space. And a prominent playwright and writer and playwright who brought Madhavi's story, popularized it, is Bhisham Sahani ji. He happens to be Balraj Sahani's younger brother. We all know Balraj Sahani ji because he was a great actor. And Bhisham Sahani ji happens to be a great writer, also a writer with leftist leanings. And he wrote a powerful 3-act drama on Madhavi, which came out in 1982. And if you look at the cover page of the book, you see there's no woman over there. There are just horses, because horses were earned as bride price in lieu of Madhavi entering into her matrimonial alliances with the kings. So for Bhisham Shahani, what was important in the whole story of Madhavi are the horses, is the exchange, the commodification of a woman's body. And he's brought that out. And he was so taken over by this exchange, this whole concept of bride price or Kanya Shulkam, that he chose. I mean, I don't know, he chose or it slipped out of his mind. But the last part of Madhavi's story, wherein she sends her father to Swarga and she meets her son, that is all omitted. Bhishma Sahani chooses to end his story or his play where Madhavi decides to get married to the forest. He doesn't see it quite as marriage. He sees it as, resigning from worldly life, giving up on society, and just, going away in frustration, in disillusionment. So he's a Padma Bhushan awardee. And the reason I have written this is just to highlight the fact that when a person as eminent and powerful as Bhisham Shahani ji writes a retelling of Madhavi, in a certain fashion, it uh, conditions our mind, and then we start to look at the whole story through this lens. And so how does he see, how is his Madhavi, how is his retelling of Madhavi? Clearly, there is no ambiguity over there. She is a victim. Okay. Bhisham Shahani's Madhavi is a motherless girl. He does not have any reference to Vishwachi, who gave birth to Madhavi. She is trapped in a world of men. There are no other women characters in the play apart from Madhavi. They are only men. And all that these men do is exploit this woman who has got this gift of becoming a virgin after every childbirth. And his understanding of virginity is also becoming pretty and beautiful. So it's a male gaze at the end of the day. Madhavi starts as a knave princess, very young, full of romantic dreams. And at the end, she is hopeless and she is disillusioned. She gets a voice because she makes some kind of a choice, but essentially it's a choice of, it's choicelessness in choice. So he doesn't give her any agency. She walks away in resignation. And Indian society is depicted, of that time, is depicted in extremely poor light. What kind of a father you just give your daughter away? What kind of an ascetic? You're just going on selling a woman. And so the theme that he covers in his play is patriarchy, objectification of the female body, commodification of women in the name of dharma. Then he shows the hollowness of ideals like honor, sacrifice, and he shows that in ancient Bharat, women had little, agency. All they could do was keep quiet and endure and just suffer. So this is his Madhavi, which became extremely popular. It was staged by many people. In fact, I got to know about this character through an actor friend of mine who had done this play on stage. And then I got interested. And interestingly, in recent times, we have had another novel, full-length novel on Maadhavi. This is from Madhavi Mahadevan. It came out in 2020. It's called The Bride of the Forest. This, in my opinion, is a slightly better take, probably because it's written by a woman. Her Maadhavi is a woman of resilience. There is rebellion in Maadhavi. She's not just a victim. There is a lot of healing and autonomy that goes on. And when Maadhavi marries the forest, which is why she's titled the book Bride of the Forest, she chooses solitude. So it's a agential choice that she makes according to Madhavi Mahadevan. But Indian society remains depicted in poor light, So while the protagonist is salvaged, but the society is not, we remain a horrible society. We're trying to talk big stuff, but underneath we exploit women. We are not empathetic enough. So the themes of patriarchy and objectification remain. She also discusses the psychological pain or the toll of being gifted and used. So this is how Madhavi's story has been read in our times, from 1980s to 2020. 2023, of course, Arya came, and there is that little short story that I have done in Arya on Madhavi. But a question that I would really like to ask all our viewers, because this is a shocking story, I'm not denying that. But the question that I want to ask is, are we reading the story right? Because there is something called lens. We all look at the world through lens, the lens of concepts, the lens of what is right and what is wrong, as we have been taught. Okay, and like you can see on this slide, uh, when we look at the same thing from different lenses, the thing starts appearing different. So if you see through a green lens, a red apple would appear black. But that doesn't mean that the red apple is black. It just means you are looking through a lens which is giving it that appearance. So when we listen to some stories in Mahabharata, it's very important to read them with certain amount of criticality, not the criticality that we have been taught. Because I think a serious problem of our times that we have been taught to be critical in a certain way. We have been taught to ask a certain set of questions. And I would really like to invite people to ask a different set of questions and see what happens then. And the lens through which we are reading stories like Maadhavi, there are some more stories, is this lens of Victorian morality, where we have very rigid gender roles, which cannot be switched. But the man is the head of the family. The wife in marriage becomes a possession of the man. And of course, sex outside marriage is a sin, nothing less. And these rules, these rigid rules, cannot be altered under any circumstance. But at the same time, the story of Maadhavi was conceived. If I imagine that it is just an imagination, even then, even if it were just an imagination, it was imagined at a time when the society was very different. We did not have a concept of morality. What we had was a concept of dharma. And dharma, in its definition, is that which can hold you, that which can contain you. And if I had to contain the spectrum of human diversity, over time, because in Hinduism, we have the concept of sthan, kal, patra. So you cannot give one rule book to people of different times, to different people who have different concerns. That would not be dharma, because it will not hold them. Okay, so the whole story starts to become different. So we need to understand that the story of Maadhavi, whether it happened or it was imagined, happened at a time when the society was living by the principles of dharma and not by the principles of morality or some rule book where certain things are wrong, irrespective of when they are done and why they are done. The nuances are not so important. Life has become, very black and white. So within marriage, everything is fine. Outside it, everything is incorrect or wrong or sinful. So what happens? So what is Maadhavi's Bharat? All of us who have little acquaintance with, our shlokas and with our civilization, we know that we have this concept of sati, where a woman is devoted to one man who happens to be a husband. But alongside, we also have the concept of kanya. Okay, and the 5 kanyas, they're very celebrated figures of our itihas. They are Ahilya, Draupadi, Kunti, Tara, and Mandodari. And those who know, none of these 5 women had restricted their sexuality to one man. They had relationships with more than one man. Ahilya, we all know, had a amorous indulgence with Indra while she was married to Rishi Gautama. Draupadi is known to have 5 men, 5 husbands. Kunti had 4 sons from 4 different devtas. Tara was first married to Bali, and then after Bali's death, she becomes Sugriv's queen and marries Sugriv. And Mandodari, according to some versions of Ramayana, she marries Vibhishan. So all the 5 of them, they were not restricted to one man. Nor were they women who never had sexual life. They had a sexual life. So quite clearly, what our ancestors or what our civilization understood by Kanyatva is not equivalent to virginity a concept that we came in contact with when we started interacting with, the rest of the world. When Christianity and Islam and these other religions had become dominant force globally. So virginity is a concept of from those cultures. And today, a lot of people think Kanyatva is equal to virginity. Brahmacharya means celibacy. But this is not true. I mean, Krishna says in Mahabharata, if I am a brahmachari, then may this happen. And that happens. And we all know Krishna not only had his amorous, indulgences with the gopis, he also had a lot of wives, you know. So clearly he was a brahmachari, but we cannot say he is a celibate. So if the more we understand Bharatiya Sanskriti, we are not a sex negative culture. Nor are we overindulgent, because repression and overindulgence are two polarities, two sides of the same coin. When you vilify sexuality, that is what ends up happening. We are a culture where kama is one of the four valid purusharthas. We have a god, a devta called Kamadev, So we respect kama. We understand its role and its importance. We understand how to work with kama, if I were to put it like that. We also, the Bharat which conceived of Maadhavi's story, or where Maadhavi existed, is also a Bharat where Tara Devi, this is the wife of Guru Brihaspati, she had a relationship with Chandra, and Budh or Mercury was born from it. But Budh was raised by Brihaspati. So not only were women having relationships after marriage, the husbands were fine. I mean, or okay, they made peace with it or whatever. But they raised the child born from the relationship of their wife with some other man. So this is a Bharat which could actually conceive of Madhavi's story. And it's very important to understand this, because all these four characters are part of Jyotish, and so this is also a very well-known story. Then Marisa was married to the 10 Pracheta brothers, and Chandradev had himself given Marisa in marriage to the 10 Prachetas, and Marisa happens to be the mother of Dakshadev, who is the father of Sati Devi. So this is the beauty of that civilization which could actually think of Madhavi. Satyavati, like we all know, this is a very, very well-known story, had Veda Vyasji out of wedlock, and Veda Vyasji happens to be the writer of Mahabharata. So if at all she is an imagination, then she is the imagination of this man who is born out of wedlock. Kunti had her 4 sons from 4 devtas. Draupadi was married to the Pandavas. So this is the sexual morality, if I have to say it like that, of the world that thought of Madhavi. Then when it comes to marriage in ancient India, we had 8 different forms of marriage. I'll not go into the details of that. It's available on Google, and because we get drifted apart from our theme of discussion. But we had 8 different forms of marriage. And one of them happened to be Gandharva Vivaha, where 2 people who had mutual affection for each other, they just say that, okay, you're my partner and I'm your partner, and the cosmos is witness to our mutual agreement. And that was enough to start a union. So this was also a valid union, a valid form of marriage in that Bharat. Open marriages were a norm in Bharatvarsh till Shvetketu. Shvetketu is a Rishi's son, also a Rishi himself, who later changed the rules of marriage. Until Shvetketu came into prominence, open marriages were a norm in Bharat. In fact, Shvetketu was very disturbed when he saw his own mother go away with a person. And Uddalak, the Rishi who raises Shvetketu, very clearly tells Shvetketu that you are not my son because you're my seed. You're my son because of my love. So I want to invite people to imagine what kind of a space we are talking about where a man can say this. I'm not talking about women. Women putting up with polyamory of men is something even that happens in our times as well. But I'm talking about a time where men were open to their wives having relationships with men apart from them. So open to that fact that they could even raise children born from that with a lot of love and affection. So very, very clear indication that Bharat had people who had conquered jealousy, because you have to be really contained emotionally and spiritually to be able to handle this. Otherwise, you end up thinking that that's my rejection. My partner rejected me. But clearly, Udalak did not have any of those feelings or sentiments. Pandu and Kunti openly discuss sexuality in Adipar when Pandu is trying to convince Kunti to have sons so that they can have a family. This is an open discussion. In fact, Pandu talks about Shwetketu and how Shwetketu changed the rules. So this is another instance where a man is actually saying, okay, please, we need to have children. So, and Niyog is a valid method. So we also have the story of Sudarshan and his wife Ogvati in Mahabharata. The story is narrated by Bhishma Pitamaha in Anushashan Parv as an example of how a man conquers death. And in that context, we talk about rather Bhishma talks about Sudarshan, who requests his wife to offer sex as a service. So their understanding of human sexuality was very different from the way we understand it. This I've already talked about, that Niyog was seen as a valid way to further one's dynasty. So for all the people who are shocked by the fact that a woman goes around 4 different kingdoms, has a son with 4 different kings, they also need to keep in mind that that this is a time when even men did the same thing. If there is a queen, her husband has passed away, then certain men were invited to impregnate those women so that children could be had. And this happens in Mahabharata when Vedavyasji is called to impregnate Ambika and Ambalika so that that family could move forward. So usually these are people who, in case of men, rishis were preferred or devtas were preferred so that they did not develop attachment with the child born, or there is no emotional, overindulgences. And in case of women, we preferred women who had gifts like Maadhavi had, that she could regain her virginity each time she had a child. So, for this very shock that we get, this is something that happens to a woman and she is exploited. Similar things were happening with men. And therefore, the society was not treating the two genders very differently when it came to the expression of their sexuality. Now, why is Madhavi's story featured in Mahabharata? Clearly, people wouldn't have said that, okay, come on, let us discuss how women can be exploited. There is a reason and a context in which the story is told in Mahabharata. And the context is Udyog Parv. To those who may not be aware, Udyog Parv is that part of Mahabharata where both the sides, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they are busy with their war preparations. And at the same time, there are a lot of people who understand that war will be, devastating. It will cause a lot of harm. So these people are, trying to convince them to not go for war. And it is this context in which the story of Maadhavi is told. So Narad Muni goes to Duryodhan and tells him the story of Maadhavi to dissuade him from going into war. So Maadhavi's story is not told in a sexual context at all. It is told in a context to convince somebody to not fight. So what is in the story that, it was told in that context? Probably what was being told was Galav's story. Galav is this ascetic who, is very adamant to give Guru Dakshina when his Guru was not even very keen to have. So finally, the Guru gives him a very, very difficult Guru Dakshina, and Galav is adamant to give that Guru Dakshina, and there is no way he can do this without Madhavi's help. So the focus of this story that Narad Muni tells Duryodhan in Udyog Parv is not Madhavi, or not how many relationships she has, or not her sons, but Galav's obstinacy and Yayati's vanity. Because what Narad Muni is trying to tell Duryodhan is, do not be obstinate, do not be vain. They are roads that lead to misfortune. So we get to know about Madhavi's story as part of Galav's story. And this is very important to understand, that the story that we read in Mahabharata is not Madhavi's story. Madhavi is a savior in that story, but a central figure in that story is Galav. And Duryodhan is being told not to be like Galav. So a very important question that the retellings of Madhavi have raised, uh, and it's a question which is very relevant for our time, is that is individuality a threat for the tribe? And at the same time, is is the tribe the enemy of the individual? Because at the time of Renaissance, somehow the Europeans began to perceive uh, a kind of either or relationship between the individual and the tribe. And this perception that they had has its roots in their society, in their civilization. But if we really look at the Bharatiya context, then we see something else. We realize that healthy tribes, if the community is healthy, then it raises great individuals. And healthy individuals build great tribes. So, the notion of individuality uh, that we get from the West is at war with the tribe. But if you really look at it, like suppose one has a gift of being a great artist or being a great sports person. To actually nurture that gift, you would need a lot of people to support. Sachin Tendulkar became Sachin Tendulkar not only because he had talent, but because he had a good mentor. His parents supported it. All the years that he was busy playing, his wife was supportive of him. So whenever you pick up any great individual, you will see that a whole tribe has supported them while they were doing their work. And the work that great individuals do, whether it's a great writer writing great books, or it's a great painter making great paintings, or it's a great scientist, the tribe benefits. And it is from this receiving of the gift of the individual that both the tribe and the individual attain fulfillment. So if I am very talented, but I'm not making any contribution to society, then I would not attain any fulfillment. We attain fulfillment only by giving ourselves. And it is this giving that Madhavi does. She has this gift. Now, clearly, a woman who has to be married to one man and who has to live the life of a chaste, devoted wife, she does not need that gift. So, the minute you hear of that gift, whether it is Kunti Devi or it is Madhavi, we know that their lives are going to take a trajectory where this gift is going to be useful. Otherwise, the whole giving of the gift becomes meaningless. So if Madhavi were just married to somebody and she was living, the life of an ordinary queen, then her destiny wouldn't have taken the trajectory that it was meant to take. So it's very important that we understand the connection between an individual's gift and the tribe that the individual lives in. Madhavi, as we know, at one point decides to become the bride of the forest. So this is something very unheard of. So I would really want to invite people to think about it, that what is the forest? And what does it mean to marry the forest? And could it mean choosing to unite with Prakriti? Because we know here is a woman, she went and had 4 marriages with 4 very different kind of men, the last of whom happened to be Vishwamitra. So we can also imagine that during her relationship with these 4 men, she would have also discussed a lot of life and philosophy, because that happened, that, like we see that Pandu and Kunti have a philosophical discussion on sexuality and morality. So we can imagine Madhavi to have had similar discussions with the men of her life. And that would have triggered her spiritual quest, her spiritual thirst. And in wanting to satiate this thirst, when she finally is, given the choice of Swayamvara, she says, okay, I'm going to marry the forest. So while a lot of people chose to imagine that Madhavi's decision to marry the forest is a kind of resignation, born of disillusionment and frustration, we can also imagine that she chose to unite with Prakriti. She chose to dive deep into her own psyche, which is a part of people's spiritual journeys. So, Madhvi, when she moves to forest, she starts living as Brigacharini. Okay. Now, what is so significant about being a Mrigacharini? To be a Mrigacharini means to live like a deer. Now, what is special about the deer? I don't know. I didn't just pressing one click and it just goes all the way. Okay. So the deer is a highly alert and aware creature. And those of us who are aware, if we look through the eyes of a deer, then the tiger doesn't appear orange. Like, if when we look at the tiger is orange and it's got these patches, but that's not how deer see the tiger. Yet, they're very alert. They know when a tiger is even close. And their whole survival depends on their ability to escape the tiger. And what kind of force is the tiger? Because we know our itihasas were also very symbolic. So, what kind of force would a tiger be symbolizing? And what would it mean to escape this kind of tiger within? So, I'm just inviting, the story of Madhvi gives us a lot of questions to ponder upon. And I'm inviting people to think, what does it mean to become so alert and so aware of the forces within oneself that one is always able to escape the tiger inside? Does it mean I'm very attuned to the malevolent aspects of my nature, my personality, so that before they can take over, I can escape and I can operate from a more harmonious space? Does it mean this? Well, I mean, everybody is free to arrive at their own answer of that. But living like a Brigacharini, what the story of Madhvi tells us that she gathers a lot of punya, and so does her sons. And the story of Madhvi, like we all know, comes to an end. Towards its closure, Madhvi, her four sons, and Galav, the uh, person who Madhvi had helped repay his debt, they all give a part of their punyas to Raja Yayati. And they help Raja Yayati rise, or rather his soul rise up to Swarga. And this is very important because we know a key aspect of Bharatiya Sanskriti is that we believe in Pitruruna, that we owe our life to our parents. And it is our responsibility to ensure that our parents are happy while in body and even while without body. So, like I said, it's very interesting that today happens to be Father's Day and we're discussing Madhvi's story because Madhvi manages to do for her father what people were not able to do even otherwise. We all know the story of Vishwamitra, where Trishanku approaches Vishwamitra and says, do a yagya so that I can reach Swarga. But Vishwamitra, despite all his power and prowess, does not succeed in opening the gates of Swarga for Trishanku. Trishanku is known to be hanging between the two worlds. But Madhvi does the undoable for her father. And probably because there is no selfish motivation. When we think of Vishwamitra was being also driven by his ego that look at my spiritual power. I can open even the doors of Swarga. Madhvi does not come from that space. She comes from a space of simply wanting to help. Okay, I have this little punya. My sons from different kingdoms have their little punya, and Galav also happens to be there. Can we all put together our punya and help my father? And the beauty is that all these people who we kind of tend to think exploited Madhvi, they're very respectful of her. And when she's gathering these punyas for her father, they cooperate. The sons don't say, okay, I'm not going to give my punya. Galav doesn't say, hello, I'm not giving my punya. They all give. And Yayati is sent back to Swarga. So what Maadhavi's story highlights is a very harmonious possibility. And this harmonious and the kind of individual who can make harmony a possibility, which is why Narad is trying to tell this story to Duryodhana. You know, the last thing you will tell a person who's adamant on war is a story which is, rooted in sexuality and lust and all that. So clearly, Narad's intention in telling this story is to highlight this aspect of Madhavi's personality, this aspect of her greatness. And, he tries to inspire Duryodhan to become harmonious, to, 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 to kind of connect to the collective. Because in Duryodhan, we see an individuality which is not aligned to the welfare of the tribe, which is so not aligned that it becomes self-sabotaging. Duryodhan at the end becomes the cause of his own death and the death of his 99 brothers. So that is what happens when you have an individual who is obsessed with something, whatever that thing may be. So not only that we do not encourage hyperautonomy in women, we also do not encourage it in men. We do not encourage it in anybody because it is not life supporting. It is self-destructive because we are part of the cosmos. And the minute we start imagining a separation and this need to stress and imprint on society our individual self, we start creating circumstances that are extremely self-destructive. And that is what Mahabharata, the whole book, is a study of. What happens when you get obsessed? When you get obsessed with an idea, when you get obsessed with your ambition, what is the consequence of it? Lastly, I just want to discuss what is Madhavi's relevance in today's society. So, if you look at the ancient society, we had three kinds of women. We had the women who were chaste and who were married. We had kanyas who, depending on the circumstance, entered into relationships with more than one man. And we also had sannyasis who had completely given up their sexuality for a different quest in mind. Also, Prachin Bharat, ancient Bharat, is a very dynamic society. You know, and today's society, if we come again, has again become very dynamic. We have become dynamic for a different reason. We have become dynamic today because of the sudden spurt in technological growth. And as a consequence of all of this, today, global statistics show that 1 in 3 women experience physical or sexual violence at least once in their lifetime. And the violence is often perpetrated by somebody known to them, often their intimate partners. We also know that divorce rates are increasing. A lot of people are not wanting to get married. In the European Union, between 1964 to 2023, divorce rates doubled. In India itself, in the last 2 decades, divorce rates have gone up. So what happens when we are living in a world like that? There is a lot of emotional crisis, which is constantly breaking us apart. People are going through heartbreak, they're going through trauma, they're going through a lot of pain. And when there is a lot of pain and suffering, we have the fuel for spiritual growth. And one of the reasons, one of the greatest gifts that India, Bharat have for the world is we have very well documented, systematic procedures, concepts, which can guide people to connect deeper with themselves, to find whatever, that the divine is. I don't want to use words like God or anything, but depending on people's natures, people's preferences, people's requirements, we have wide range of methods, of concepts, of philosophies that can guide people. And we also are living in a world where the whole body, mind, and energy healing market is $78.58 billion. It was valued at 78.58 billion in 2023. By 2030, it is expected to grow to 394.73 billion. In India also, this market is growing. So the healing industry is really growing because, like I discussed, there is a lot of need today for healing. When there is pain, when the families are breaking apart, people are also uh, experiencing their inner emptiness like never before. And when you experience the inner emptiness, one risk is that of moving towards addictions. The other risk is, you want to get out of this pain. You want to move towards light. You want to move towards something which can help you become whole. And in this kind of a world, in this kind of a global circumstance, decoding the secrets of our kanyas, understanding the spiritual and the neuroscientific aspects of kanyatva can prove a great medicine. So I'm not sure how many of our viewers are aware that there is somebody, she's a therapist called Catherine Woodward Thomas. She's developed a course called Conscious Uncoupling, which if you take it digitally, it costs 297 US dollar. If you want to become a conscious uncoupling coach, it costs 9,995 US dollars. Uh, very similar to becoming a kanya, very similar to becoming a virgin. What you're talking about is conscious uncoupling. Probably this is what our kanyas were doing. They knew the art of detachment. They knew how to enter into a union and then how to walk out of a union in a way that was harmonious. So the story of Maadhavi is also relevant because it gives us this cue that this is also a possibility uh, beyond being a victim, beyond being exploited. Possibly, Maadhavi had a gift that we all need to search for our own selves, and that's all. Uh, Dhanyavad and happy Father's Day.
That was a really exciting talk to have, ma'am. Not only was it insightful in the historical character, but also her relevance in the present times. Um, those kind of insights into someone who's so unexplored in modern discourse is, I think, very much needed, and it has only amplified the need of talks like these. We'll delve into the question answer session. And the first question that I wanted to ask you, ma'am, is that how do you think the way Indian history and Indian literature encapsulates a female personality compares to the rest of the world?
Uh, the most interesting thing about the way we have captured women is that we have been very mindful that men and women, and the masculine and the feminine, are different. Okay, we don't say Shiva is Shakti. Nobody does that. We don't. But at the same time, we give them equal respect. So we don't fall in that sameness trap, but we also don't demean. The beauty of Bharatiya Sanskriti is its ability to respect diversity. We have the feminine, the masculine, and the androgynous, and we are equally respect of the three. Very respectful, and we understand where to place each. But we have not hidden their stories. They are all out there. They are all out there in the open. So I think this is what is unique about us in comparison to the other dominant cultures of civilization that exist. Because you see, we also need to be mindful that while we're sitting and having this conversation, there are a lot of civilizations which have been erased, pagan cultures which have been erased. So I don't know how they would have done it because that has been destroyed completely. We have managed to survive. And with us, what has survived is this kind of a thing. Where else will you find, the iconography of Radha Krishna? So we have the iconography of Radha Krishna where they are equals. We also have the iconography of Sri Vishnu and Lakshmi ji's on the Adishesha, where Lakshmi ji is pressing Vishnu's feet. And we also have the iconography of Ma Kali standing on Shiva. So we have all the possibilities, and we have Lalita Tripura Sundari sitting on Sadashiva. So, so we don't have one rule for all. We have different rules. We have different imagery, and we have different aspects of the feminine. So you have Radharani, you have Mata Sita, you have Sati, you have Ma Kali, you have the Dashamahavidyas, and uh, to honor the different stages of a woman's life, we also have a Devi like Dhumavati. I mean, can you even imagine that she just ate her husband because she was hungry? And then, it's both fun and at the same time deep. So it's something that can engage a 5-year-old child, and it also has something for a 50-year-old man or woman. So that, I think, is the beauty of our civilization.
That was beautifully put, ma'am. The last question is, what is your interpretation of Sitaism? And if there is any story of Mata Sita that has stayed with you over the years?
I was just 2 years or 3 years when I first came across their story. So it's the first story that I have heard, because somebody gifted a Ramayana book to me when I was a child. And the book was full of pictures. And I remember in that Mata Sita was in a pink color sari. And so I developed a lot of love for pink. So I would first like to talk about Mata Sita, and though she is widely known, unlike Maadhavi, but she is one of the most misunderstood goddesses. When people say like Sita, I mean, I sometimes wonder, do you really want a woman to be like Sita? I mean, a lot of Indian patriarchs would not like. I mean, Ram must have had a tough time. Anything he goes and tells her, she argues back. Because King Janak was a Jivan Mukta, and his family, his tradition was very empowering. He gave his daughters the freedom to argue, to reason. So Sita Mata is somebody who has a mind of her own. She's not somebody, she is very devoted and loving towards Ram. She loves him very deeply. Even when, she raises her children all alone in a forest, she does not talk bad about him. Nor does Sri Ram take a second wife. Even when he needs a wife, not for personal pleasure, but for delivering his duties, he says, "Go make her idol." You know. So when we listen to their story, we are actually listening to the most poignant love story ever conceived of. uh, you know and so this is Sita. You cannot talk about Sita without talking about Ram. Likewise, you cannot talk about Ram without talking about Sita. They are just so into each other. They're just so together. I mean, they had to go through a separation because we live on this earth plane where things are not perfect, and nothing can probably be perfect, but otherwise they are always all the time together. And to be Sita, to me, is to delve deep into one's own essence and to express it. That to me is to draw inspiration from Mata Sita. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to use the word ism in association with her, because I think we don't need to. Feminism has a place in world history. I'm not going to say that it is useless. Uh, it was required at a certain period in time. We also needed it. But today we need to talk about our uh, heroines more than anyone else, because they give this whole spectrum of archetype, which is not available in the West. Like in the West, what do you have? Like, you have Lilith, but Lilith again is a demon. She's demonized. But Sita has not been demonized. She remains a goddess till the last minute. And that's important. We need to talk about Radha. Like we imagine when we think of Radha Rani, we think about a very demure woman who's like exploited by Krishna, and she spends rest of her life crying. We don't realize she is a goddess who had her own Sudarshan Chakra, and somebody who couldn't be killed even by Vishnu Sudarshan Chakra, she could. So, it's high time that we explore our own stories, because they offer a lot of possibilities every story, I would say every heroine and hero of Bharatvarsh is a medicine, is a medicinal portal. And one reason why we should stop looking at these stories and these people from the Western lens is because we then lose the medicinal value of and it's like taking a medicine which is expired, which has had its expiry date. You end up harming yourself. So we need to ask questions which are rooted in our culture, which are rooted in our experience. And yeah, so I think we don't need Sitaism, but we need Sita. We need to connect with her. We need to connect with all the goddesses that we have, the Shamahavidyas, the heroines, Draupadi, Kunti. I mean, and we need to learn from them. And then we need to take what is relevant for us. At different stages of life, we might need to embody different people, which is why we have so many. One size does not fit all.
That is a wonderful way to say it, ma'am. That I think if we force a Western lens into our stories, we take away the healing that can be given to us by the stories and the culture that we have so well entrenched into our society. That is a great way of ending this one episode of ours in the series and initiative of Sitaism. We wish to have more such talks with you. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.